We've got to normalize women having schmegs just for schmegs, not for love or anything else. And here's why. Thank you for this comment. This is my mutual. Before anybody says anything, I know that hookup culture benefits men, but hookups don't have to benefit men. And I just really want to push back against this narrative that sounds so much like purity culture, because so many women are having terrible hookups with men. And again, a lot of times it's younger women. Older women oftentimes have great hookups with men because we know that we're the boss. And I say this as someone who had terrible hookups and walks of shame and all that crap. In my 20s and my early 30s, and then my late 30s and in my 40s, I had walks of hell yeah, that was amazing. No more shame, because it's on my terms. And if I'm not enjoying, I don't do it. And I want to share one thing before I get to the bigger subject that I really need to talk about. When I was on vacation with one of my best girlfriends, this guy wanted to hook up with her, and she didn't want to hook up with him. She was just waiting for me to hook up with this French guy who I was making out with in a car. She was like the best co-pilot ever. She didn't want to hook up with this guy. She was just hanging out with him, and he was like, do you want to have schmegs? And she was like, well, I mean, only if you eat my. And he was like, oh no, I don't do that. I only do that with girlfriends. She's like, okay, well then no, I'm not gonna hook up with you at all. And he's like, come on, why not? She's like, those are the conditions. Either you do that and maybe I'll have schmegs with you, or no, you get nothing. And he wouldn't do it. So instead he like braided her hair and they just had fun while I finished hooking up with my Frenchie. Now, when she told me that story, I think I was like 34 at the time. I was like, oh, how could you say that to a man? She was like, because I'm tired of them using my body as their surrogate hand. I'm done. I'm done. So those are my conditions. And if you didn't like it, that's fine. I don't have to do anything. I don't want to. I was like, oh my God, I want to be like you. And then I became like her. It took me some time and some practice, but I became like her. So why is it important? Again, if you don't want to hook up with men, if you're not in like a good place and it's every time you do, you get used and exploited, you probably shouldn't be hooking up with them. You should probably focus on healing some trauma and really deconstructing patriarchy and purity culture and all the things that are messing with you. And if you're just not doing it in a safe way, maybe tap out. But for those who really just like want to step into that schmexual power and not to date men. I did not do this with men I wanted to date, ever. This was literally just to have schmegs for the sake of schmegs and physical connection and fun and nothing else. I have never done this with a man and ended up dating him and it turned out well. Not saying maybe it's possible, but I couldn't do it. But I want to normalize women being able to do this. You have to vet really hard. I mean, it requires a lot of labor, but if you want to try it, here's why it's important. So one of my mutuals on one of those other apps, she wrote this one for women's health, and I didn't think this article was going to be what it actually ended up being. I thought this was about child-free and whatever. No, these points, look at it. It talks about how the female O has definitely not been a part of the curriculum that we teach kids. Now, this is about a woman who grew up in the UK, but this was my experience in the US. I think it may be even worse in the US because especially where I grew up in the South. Purity culture it's so bad there. But purity culture is also tied to white supremacy, especially anti-blackness. So it makes sense why it is so extreme in the South. Anyway, she says women's pleasure has basically just been a surplus to reproduction, like an added bonus to the real reason that women are supposed to be having schmegs, reproduction. Boys ejaculate, girls menstruate. That's what we're taught in school. So young men learn that basically owing and pleasure are a standard part of sex ed for boys, whereas young women's sexual education focus on periods and pregnancy prevention. Pleasure and the completely left out of the picture. So then she goes on to talk about this book, and Responsibility, a whole new way to think about abortion. There's a lot of discomfort with women having schmegs for pleasure at all. We don't want women to have schmegs. We're trying to make mothers schmegsual so we don't have to think about how they became mothers. And here's the key point. When women don't have children, it implies no need for men. You could be having schmegs with men, but you don't need them. And this is threatening to the status quo. And that is why child-free women and just single women, who are just out here having schmegs, it's not because we're doing it to get into a relationship with a man. No one can understand why we're just still hanging out with men. We don't want to date them. We don't want to marry them. We just want to have schmegs. So if men are not useful to impregnate us so that we can carry their children, and if they're not useful to us for relationships, because we don't want that, they want relationships. A lot of women don't want relationships anymore because they're realizing they don't benefit us usually. I'm in a relationship that absolutely benefits me. I have grown so much from this marriage. I love it. And I have always been against marriage. So I had to have an open mind because I was like, well, I guess I was so cynical. I was like, nope, there's literally men are doing nothing for me. But when I met my husband, I was like, I can't imagine not being with him because he loves me so much, and we learn and we grow so much together. I'm becoming a better person and learning about myself and growing into this whole new person. I'm even more confident than I was single, which has never happened with a man. But most women are realizing that, like, if we're not getting that out of a relationship, it's not worth it. So we're just out here just, forking, having fun. We don't want to have your baby. We don't want to date you. We don't want to marry you. We don't want to do anything for you. At this point, it's what can you do for me? And because of the way we have been raised, and especially purity culture's chokehold on women, that is why they can't stand us. We are such a threat. And that's why they're like, you're going to die alone with cats. And women are like, yeah, hell yeah, that's what I want. And besides, we're not going to die alone. We'll die with our friends. Our nieces and our friends will take care of us. We're pouring into those relationships. We take care of us. Golden girls, man. So yeah, I do not agree with hookup culture when it benefits men. But if you're hooking up and you're having fun, these men are serving you and pleasing you and making your life better instead of making it worse, and you're centering yourself, they're centering your hell yeah. I'm so tired of my reproductive organs being talked about in relationship to motherhood or because being used as a means to get a man to love me. No, I was out there having schmacks because I enjoyed it. It was fun. I was getting I was like, man, I didn't know my body could feel this good. And again, as a woman who was celibate for 12 of my adult years, who completely tapped out of dating, wanted nothing to do with men because they made me crazy and they traumatized me and they SA'd me and they stalked me. I am so glad that I didn't mess with them at all. One of the most empowering things was in my late 30s when I knew I wasn't having kids. And I'm firm in that decision, and especially in my early 40s, I was like, oh my God, this is the best. I don't need these men. They need me. So they better do something for me to give them anything. And not too long from now, men who actually are in a relationship with women are going to be seen as like, oh my God. So many women are just tapping out, man. Single women will no longer, I promise you, one day single women are not going to be judged. Married women are going to be judged as the ones who are making questionable decisions.